We have reached an important part of our program. President Orenstein of the Queens Village Republican Club is going to introduce our special guest speaker, Mr. Roger Stone. President Orenstein.
I want to ask you something. Are you ready for Roger Stone? We are proud as a club to have Roger Stone here with us. He's the senior advisor to Presidents Nixon, President Ronald Reagan, and President Donald Trump. He's a best-selling author. He's a pundit. He's a legendary superstar. We all know him. We all love him. Let's folks join together and give Roger Stone a taste of our Queens Village Republican Club hospitality. Are you ready for Roger Stone? USA! 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 USA!
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please be seated. I hope you are ready for some stone cold truth. I'm delighted to be here in President Donald Trump's native county of Queens. It's a great honor. I spoke to Alex Jones this morning and I told him that I would be here tonight, and he asked me to extend his greetings and tell you that he is with us in spirit. Alex Jones of InfoWars. Let me also salute my friend and colleague, Frank Gaffney, a man of enormous courage, a fighter for the American people. "2016 was the year in which the mainstream media lost their monopoly on political discourse in this country. The technological advances of the internet gave rise to a robust, vibrant alternative media, and it is only that development that allowed Donald Trump to become elected president. Donald Trump won the most improbable, come-from-behind victory in U.S. political history. When you consider that Hillary Clinton and her allies spent something in excess of $2 billion, and Donald Trump and his supporters probably spent $275 million, perhaps. When you consider the way the old media, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, was stacked against him. When you consider the way the new media was stacked against him. Why is it when the Trump campaign put out a press release, Google called it a promotion, but when Hillary Clinton put out a press release, Google called it an update? That's the difference between millions and millions of openings. So despite this enormous advantage, both in terms of political experience and in terms of mainstream media bias, Donald Trump quite simply outfoxed, outworked, outthought, and outhustled his opponent. In the closing weeks of the campaign, the schedules of the two candidates would tell you much. Hillary Clinton was in Chappaqua going through the fabric samples, choosing the fabric for the curtains in the Oval Office. While Donald Trump was barnstorming Democratic strongholds in Milwaukee and Detroit and Philadelphia and Miami-Dade and Cleveland and so on. And if you analyze the election results in those closest states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and yes, Florida, what you will learn is that Donald Trump ran essentially at an equal level where nominees Mitt Romney and John McCain had run in Republican areas. It was in Democratic areas. It was in blue-collar, overwhelmingly Catholic, working-class neighborhoods that Donald Trump was able to run 3 to 4% ahead of where previous Republican nominees had run. And in the inner cities, Hillary Clinton did substantially less well among African American voters, and Donald Trump did than Obama had done. And Donald Trump ran marginally ahead of where his Republican predecessors had run. Donald Trump won this election among Democrats. Now, the election of Donald Trump so completely threatens the two-party duopoly and the elites of both parties and the Washington buddy system of lawyers and lobbyists and special interests that it is impossible to underestimate the deep enmity of the elite leadership and the Washington establishment for this president, or to underestimate their resolve to remove him and undo what they could not do at the ballot box in 2016. I agree with Frank Gaffney. The Mueller Special Counsel investigation is a witch hunt. We have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars, and there is yet to be found one iota of collusion or coordination or conspiracy between the Russian state, the Trump campaign, Donald Trump, Trump associates, or the Trump family. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fairy tale. It's a canard. It's a myth. More precisely, it's bullshit. Now, this past week, I myself have been subjected to a torrent of fake news. You can find a story out there that says Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee want to refer to the Justice Department my testimony before the committee for prosecution for perjury, or so Robert Mueller can read my sealed testimony. You might remember that I wanted to testify in public. It is the Democrats who wanted me to testify behind closed doors. My testimony to the committee is 100% truthful. Submissions to the committee prove definitively that I did not collude in any way with any Russians, that I did not collaborate in any way with WikiLeaks. But we now have what's called the new journalism. Let me explain to you how this works. Proof and evidence are out the window as the standard. Now, any person can come forward without corroboration and make unsubstantiated claims against you, and they'll put them on MSNBC, and they'll put them on CNN, and they'll write about it in the Washington Post. This is the new standard that we call fake news. So let's be absolutely clear. I never met or spoke with or emailed with Julian Assange. I never received any documents from WikiLeaks or Assange or anyone else. I never passed any documents, including allegedly hacked emails to Donald Trump or the Trump campaign, and I never discussed the matter with Donald Trump before, during, or after the campaign. All of this is, of course, based on a false premise that Julian Assange is a Russian asset, that WikiLeaks is a Russian front organization. Bullshit. Julian Assange is a journalist. Journalists obtain information from whistleblowers and they publish that information. That's what Julian Assange does. But the difference between WikiLeaks and the New York Times, the difference between WikiLeaks and the Washington Post, is that in the 11 years that WikiLeaks has been in business, no one has ever accused them of publishing anything that was not accurate and authentic. Can the other news outlets say that? Julian Assange's crime is deeply embarrassing our government by publishing deep secrets that they don't want the American taxpayers and voters to know. So their entire idea that you were in touch with Julian Assange and that would constitute treason because Assange is a Russian, well, Sean Hannity has interviewed Assange multiple times. When are they arresting him? This is an absurdity. It is based on a false premise. Oh, our intelligence agencies insist this is true. Well, these are the same people who told us, no, there's no metadata collection program on Americans. Isn't that what General Clapper, the advisor to President Barack Obama, told us? Until Edward Snowden proved that he was lying. These are the same people who told us that there were weapons of mass destruction and that Saddam Hussein had them, except for there weren't. No, sadly, our intelligence agencies, particularly the FBI, have become politicized. And what they say now fits a political narrative that is built around removing Donald Trump for president because he's opposed to more foreign wars where our inherent national interests are not crystal clear. Now, since Donald Trump's election, this is not the first effort to remove him. Some of you may remember they had a recount. Now, I wrote a piece for The Hill, which is a Capitol Hill newspaper, in which I expressed concern that these computerized voting machines, which are in common use here in New York, are easily hacked and manipulated. They're a very simple computer. And fortunately, while they are centrally linked, usually on a county or city basis where they're in use, there is no central link in the entire country. Only by comparing the results of exit polls with the actual results of the machines can you look for the kind of swing that would indicate manipulation, usually by Democratic machines, of the totals in the voting machines. I was met with a firestorm of criticism. Media matters for America. Those twisted freaks went out of their minds. Stone is undermining democracy, questioning the accuracy of these voting machines. It was an act of anti-Americanism. That was until Hillary Clinton decided to file for recounts in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now, when you file for a recount, as experts like Bart Hager will tell you, first you have to file your general objections, then you have to file your specific objections. Well, when their specific objection time came, their objection was quite simple. These computerized voting machines are easily hacked and manipulated. Well, you know the results of the recount. It turned out that Donald Trump actually won those 3 states slightly bigger than he had on election night. So then, John Podesta, the chairman of the Clinton campaign, suggested that the electors in the Electoral College be given a briefing on Russian collusion. Well, that would have been the shortest briefing in American history. They also tried to appeal to Republican electors not to vote for the candidate who would carry to their states. That would have been Donald Trump, and that failed. So now we have 2 attempts not to seat this president. The Mueller investigation will be attempt number 3. When it fails, there will be attempt number 4. They will stop at nothing to remove a man who so threatens business as usual. What were we told under 8 years of Barack Obama? That we had to accept this anemic economic growth. That America's great days were behind us. We just had to accept our place in the new world economy. 2 million plus new jobs have been created since Donald Trump became president. In the meantime, he's cut regulation to the bone, given us a solid conservative on the U.S. Supreme Court. He's made it very clear that these one-size-fits-all trade agreements that have put us on the losing side of the trade agreements with our trading partners are through, and we're going to start negotiating on a one-by-one basis to get free trade, fair trade, mutually beneficial trade. Now, some Republicans question the president's support of tariffs. Frankly, I think the president is very clever in using the threat of tariffs to get our trading partners back to the table to make a better deal. Those who say that the president is starting a trade war are wrong. We've been in a trade war for the last 30 years, and we're getting our butt kicked. I was particularly pleased by the president's appointment or announcement that he will appoint Larry Kudlow of CNBC, one of the original apostles of supply side and growth economics, a man who helped fashion the Reagan tax cuts, a man who helped fashion what I think was the most dynamic, pro-growth economic program of any of the Republicans running for president, the program of candidate Donald Trump. We finally have an economic advisor who will work with this president to turbocharge this economy. Now, let's be completely candid. All of this discussion of Russian collusion, the attack on Donald Trump Jr., the attack on me, the attack on all of the president's allies, is meant to distract from the extraordinary crimes that were committed under the president's predecessor and crimes committed in connection with the 2016 election. The IRS abuses under Barack Obama remain unprosecuted. The crimes of the Clinton Foundation, which is not a charity but a slush fund for grifters and a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes, goes unprosecuted. The illegal handling of classified information in Hillary Clinton's illegal email server goes unprosecuted. The use of a fabricated dossier by the Obama Justice Department and the FBI under Barack Obama as the legal rationale for surveillance on the Republican candidate for president is the largest case of political espionage in our history and is an egregious abuse of power, using the authority and surveillance capability of the state to spy on the Republican candidate for president makes Watergate look like small potatoes. And then there's Uranium One. This is the largest treasonous financial crime in American history. It is a crime that involves Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. McCabe, and yes, de facto Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And yet, this crime today goes unprosecuted. No, this is all meant to be a distraction for the fact that they are busted and the corruption that we have uncovered due to the efforts of congressmen like Matt Gaetz, like Trey Gowdy, like Jim Jordan, like Ron DeSantis, gutsy, brave, courageous congressmen. I know Lee Selden and others in the House who have not been afraid to speak up. It is only because of the leadership of these Republicans that we know about the FBI's secret text messages and their plan for an insurance policy to remove Donald Trump in the unlikely event that he was elected. Now, several weeks ago, I spoke to a Republican dinner in Lee County, Florida. It was an affair very much like this. It was a great evening. Lee County is the county that has provided statewide Republicans with their margin in the governor's races and in U.S. Senate races in every election in recent history. And behind me, there was a terrific presentation on Republican presidents. And we talked about Lincoln, and they talked about Theodore Roosevelt. By the way, Theodore Roosevelt, they said he was an egomaniac, a self-promoter, a lightweight, and a braggart. One of our greatest presidents. But I noticed, and then there was a great tribute to President Ronald Reagan, perhaps the greatest president of my lifetime. But I noticed in this presentation that we skipped over the presidency of one Richard Nixon. And therefore, I want to say just this. This is a man who reached a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets. This is a president who opened the door to China. This is a president who desegregated the public schools without bloodshed or violence. This is a president who single-handedly saved Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Over the objections of Dr. Kissinger, over the objections of the Joint Chiefs. This is a president who launched the war on cancer. This is a president who desegregated the trade unions. This is a president who achieved very great things. Now, he also made, in my opinion, egregious mistakes. Closing the gold window, taking us off the gold standard, an enormous mistake. Launching the ignominious, failed, racist war on drugs, an ignominious mistake. But it is time for Republicans to embrace the entire legacy of one of our greatest presidents. Now, most of you know that I have on my back a tattoo of Richard Nixon. I may have a legal defense fund fundraiser upstairs later where I'll show it for a $1,000 contribution. Ladies only. In all seriousness, it's about the size of a grapefruit, just like a floating head that's between my shoulder blades. Yes, I was very drunk when I got this done. But it is not really a political statement. For me, it's a daily reminder that in life, when things don't go your way, when you're knocked down, when you suffer defeats, when you have setbacks, when something you're counting on happening doesn't come through for you, when you're dejected and you're depressed and you're ready to give up, well, that's the time to get up off the mat and get back in the game. The story of Richard Nixon is a story of resilience. It's a story of persistence. It's an American story. And therefore, I'm reminded of his famous words when he said, "A man is not finished when he is defeated. He is only finished when he quits." Well, ladies and gentlemen, like Donald J. Trump, I am not a quitter. It's been a great honor to be with you tonight.